All right, let's get started. Okay, I'm going to share my screen and we're going to talk about where we are right now. If everybody would go on mute, please. Can you all see my screen? Thumbs up.
Yes.
Thank you. Wonderful. All right. Welcome to week 4. You guys made it. I said a little bit ago, maybe before some of you joined, I have not got a chance to review your week 3 papers yet. I started looking at one earlier, I guess about an hour ago. I will get those back to you hopefully by tomorrow. I want you guys to have your grades back and see if I had any suggestions or anything. So I will get those back to you tomorrow. Okay. Just real quick, let's do a review. So here's some things that I've seen. And again, I've not graded your week 3. These are some common errors that I'm going to keep talking about them because the more we do them, the more you stop making these mistakes. Okay. Not nitpicking, but if I keep telling you, it'll become habit. And as you write, you'll stop doing them. So always want to make sure you adhere to APA style and format. Avoid first person. I know this is a habit because I can tell because you'll do real good on one paragraph and then another paragraph. I see we, us, our. Avoid that. Try to make your statements general. I sent an email out a couple of weeks ago with some examples. If you would like, I will send more. You just want to make sure you're not making your paper personal because as you start doing your research and you start writing for your thesis or your dissertation, you want to make sure that you're making generalized statements. No I, me, we, us. Please avoid doing that. Reread your paper. Make sure you don't have that in there. Anywhere you do, you want to make sure you take it out and rewrite the sentence as necessary to make it a more generalized statement. Tense. This is a big one. I see this quite a bit. You may have most of the paper written in the past tense, and then you'll have something to say something currently is or something like that. Make sure you watch your tense. Don't switch between present and past tense. Sometimes I've seen it in the same paragraph. So that's a big one. These are the most common things I've been seeing in your papers. Always look and make sure that you're not doing that. Either stick to present tense or stick to past tense. A sentence.
I was talking about throughout the whole paper. If I'm going to start it off in present tense all the way down, it must be present, and then the past. And most time that you're writing, like a lot of these people we writing, like when did Ruth, because it was the past, we need to keep that basically in the past.
Correct.
Okay.
Very good. Yes, correct. Sentence, not paragraph. I haven't seen this week, so I didn't get to change this, but quite a few of you did still have 2 sentences as a paragraph. Okay. Pay attention. Sometimes you have these sentences that are a little bit longer and you look at it and it kind of looks like it's probably a paragraph, but go back and start counting your periods in there. If you only have 2 periods, it's 2 sentences. So go back and make sure that you really have a good paragraph. Adhere to the list of words you should not use. Okay. Often I see a lot of that. I see a lot of as well as. Go back and look at that list. Some of these words are just not necessary. And again, you're going to keep doing it until you keep not doing it, right? Until you start making it a habit. And as you continue to do this, it will be a habit and you'll find yourself doing it all the time. It's going to take time, but I'm going to mark it every time I see it. Don't take offense, but the more I mark it and the more you change it, the more you'll get in the swing of changing it. Okay. Citations. Okay. So if you use a citation in your paper, you must have a corresponding reference for it on your reference page. Unless it's the Bible, we talked about that. You don't necessarily need the Bible as in your reference page. But if you use a citation, you need a corresponding reference on your reference page. And the opposite is also true. If you have a reference down in your reference section, there should be a corresponding citation to that author and year somewhere in your text, okay? So go through, if you have to do a find, you use the find function in Word. Look for, I don't know, if you had an author Smith of 2020, go back and look for Smith. Make sure that you've got Smith referenced in your reference page, or if you've got them in your references, make sure you've got Smith in somewhere as a citation in your text. Does everybody understand what I mean by that? Okay. Okay. I want to make sure that's clear. And as always, do a spelling and grammar check. Go back through. Sometimes the grammar check doesn't necessarily catch tense, present, past tense, or if you're saying something in the past and you don't put an ed on it or something like that. So kind of go back through and reread it. Or if you have someone else that can read it for you, ask them, does this make sense? Sometimes we're very familiar and we know what we're trying to say. And it's good to kind of step away from your paper for a little bit and go do something else. Wash dishes, clean the house, do something else, go for a walk, and then come back and read it again. Or if you're finished, if you're doing it late at night, I've been guilty of this, trying to hurry up and do something at night, step away from it. If you have time, look at it first thing in the morning. Just kind of get fresh eyes on it, reread it. Does it still make sense? Did I say something somewhere that I should elaborate a little bit more on? Or is something too wordy and I can condense this and say it a little bit better? So I recommend taking time to write your paper early enough to where you have time to kind of step away from it and go back and look at it and reread it just to make sure it makes sense. Okay, so you guys, I can tell you guys are doing a lot better from week 1. I really see the growth. So you guys are doing much better, but these are just some common errors that I'm seeing that I want you kind of get in the practice of, go back and make sure you're not using first person or you're not making any personal references. Look at the tense. That's an easy thing to miss that sometimes the grammar check won't pick up on. And then again, like I said before, your paragraphs, sentences, make sure that you're looking at everything you need to do to make sure your sentence and your paragraphs make sense and that they overall contribute to the theme of your paper. They're lining up what's in the introduction and that your conclusion is wrapping it all together. Yes, Sister Julie.
I was reviewing Wallace and Way, those 2 chapters, 2 and 7, and I found them. I wish I had, started reading them the first week, because they're very helpful chapters in going over what, all of the do's and the don'ts, and to make things easy, and don't take offense for criticizations, and all that this is all part of the process of becoming a better thinker, a better writer, and being able to say the most with the least amount of words.
Your reference material is great. It really
excellent,
is.
Excellent. Yes.
I went back and kind of picked out chapters I thought you guys should read and tried to find videos, but those please take time to look at your reference material. Even the links that I've sent you all, there is a wealth of knowledge in those links. You can find just about anything you want to find on APA format, APA style, how to do your citations, your references, your sources. Everything is readily available to you. If you look at those sources, it's a wealth of knowledge. Okay, let's go to the next slide and get into what we're going to talk about this week. Okay. This is kind of just a reminder about your sources. We talked about this last week. And again, just your primary and secondary sources. I'm not going to go into detail because we talked about it last week, but you really just kind of want to make sure that you're taking a look at your sources and where that information is coming from. This is going to be pretty important as we start moving towards week 4 through 8, okay? You're going to want to pay attention to those sources, okay? Okay, so now we're going to talk about something we haven't talked about yet. What is anthropomorphism? Okay, It's probably a new topic for you all. It is when you give human characteristics to non-human entities. What do I mean by that? So this first sentence is the incorrect way of writing it. The experiment will demonstrate. Well, an experiment can't demonstrate, right? So it says the experiment will demonstrate the early development of children's vocabulary. Okay, so that's incorrect because you're giving a human quality to an experiment. An experiment cannot demonstrate anything, right? So the correct way, and this is a common mistake, okay? Common mistake. So the correct way of writing that is the purpose of the experiment is to demonstrate, okay? The purpose of the experiment is to demonstrate the early development of children's vocabulary. Notice the difference there? We're not saying the experiment is doing, we're saying the purpose of the experiment is to demonstrate, okay? The exception, there always seems to be exceptions. So if the discussion part of the paper is talking about has phrases like the results illustrate. So you're talking about the results of an experiment, the results of a study, or these findings suggest, okay? Many of you will be using these phrases, particularly in your dissertation, because you're going to, or your thesis for that matter, whenever you're doing research, right? Your research typically is not based on your opinion and what you think. Your research is based on what does the evidence suggest? What do your findings suggest? What do the results show, right? Not what I think. So this is what I've gathered the data, and the results of the data suggest something, right? So you want to make sure that you're very careful in how you word things, right? You don't want to give a human characteristic to a non-human entity or object of some sort, okay? So you want to refer to chapter 3 of your Schwartz text. This is your APA book, okay? Most of our references are going to come from Schwartz. But look at chapter 3. It will help you. This is a very, very common mistake, but it kind of, the whole point of this is to get your mind to thinking of how to write things differently and how to really appropriately articulate what it is you're trying to say. So if you're doing an experiment or you're collecting data, you're going to talk about your results or your findings or the data you collected, right? The experiment itself doesn't do anything. It's not demonstrating, it's not illustrating, it is not, there is no verb that the actual experiment is doing, okay? Any questions on that? Okay. Your citations. So we've already talked about this, and I felt it was important to reiterate. So your citations, you're going to have your author and the date of publication. If it's at the end of a sentence, you're going to have the period after the citation. I found some of you guys are writing your sentence, you're putting a period, and then you're putting in parentheses the citation in another period. So just remember to leave that period off, and that period is at the very end after the citation. There's a whole reference chart in your Schwartz text. It's in chapter 8, table 8.1. I've got a little bit of that on the next slide here, but you want to make sure that you're properly citing your references. We talked about this last week and I believe the week before, but this is just to kind of reiterate exactly how to do your citations. And if you look at chapter 12, same book, you'll see about how to actually do your references. And again, we had a video on that as well, as far as how to cite web pages and how to actually do your books, journals, web pages. All those are specifically called out in chapter 12 of your Schwartz text. And I'm sure there's a YouTube video on it. The sources at the end here, the Purdue OWL, I don't know how many of you all have looked at that. It is a wealth of knowledge with everything you need for your APA format. If you start clicking through there, you're going to find examples and templates on how to do just about anything you need to do, and particularly with the 7th edition of the APA format. Okay. This is a table I kind of just put together with just a very few of your citations, okay? This is not the complete list. Don't look at this as this is, oh, Dr. Ware only had this on the paper. This is not complete list. I just pulled a few out to put on this slide. The complete list is in table 8.1 of your APA format book, okay? But I kind of just wanted to pull this out to make sure you guys see some of these examples. So if you have one author, you're going to put the author's last name, comma, and the year. This is nothing new. We've been talking about this a couple of weeks, but because I'm seeing a couple of errors on your papers, I kind of just want to foot stomp this a little bit and bring it to your attention. If you have two authors, notice here, and this is for the in-text citation. This is not your reference page. You're going to have the first author, ampersand, and the second author. Okay. Now, with three or more authors, and this may differ based on which edition of the APA format, but typically, when you have the author, the first time you mention if you have three authors or more, and I only use three in this example, but if you have three authors or more, you're going to list those authors and you're going to spell out each of their names and the year the very first time. Okay. So the first time you mention them, you're going to list all three names in your citation. Any other time after that, you'll put the first author's name, comma, et al., which means and others, and then the year. Okay. So you don't need to necessarily, if you have three or more authors, you don't necessarily have to mention each name every time you use that citation. Okay. So if you have several citations for those authors, you're going to spell it out the first time, all the authors' names, and then you can condense it thereafter. Okay. A document from a website. So this is a little bit different than a web page, but if it's a document from the website, you're going to put the author. If there's an author, if there's not an author, you'll put the organization and the year. So the same way you do anything else, author, if the author is available. If not, you're going to put the name of the organization or some sort of entity and the year. You don't see this much, but in the event that you have, was there a question? Okay, sorry, I thought I heard something. So you don't see this often, but in the event that you have some sort of personal communication, you got an email, someone provided a lecture, or there was a briefing given somewhere. You don't too much have conversations, but if someone was dictating a conversation, this just shows how you would annotate such a citation in your text. Again, with research, you may have this. Again, you don't see it very often, but in the event that you do, you want to note exactly how you would cite personal communications, okay? And again, you can find more about this in your book. I just kind of listed it here. Secondary sources. We talked about this last week. So when we're talking about secondary sources, remember, these are sources that are mentioned from someone else's work. So if I read a paper and this paper is written, the paper I'm reading is from Brown, and Brown's paper is referencing work by Smith. So that's a secondary source. So you would list the material read about in the other material. So you're going to put, in this instance, I should have said Ross and Mueller instead of Brown and Smith. But so you would mention the authors of what you're reading as cited in Krug and Fuchs. Does that make sense? So this is for a secondary source. Again, it's usually better if you can find, if you know what you're reading is referencing some other material, go to the original material. It's typically better. And the reason I say that is you're not depending on someone else's analysis of the original material. If you can find the original material that's referenced, it's always good to make your own analysis of what's being read. That way you have your interpretation and you're not reading someone else's thoughts. I'm not saying it's wrong. You can use secondary sources, but if they give you the opportunity and mention the original source, it's always better to reference the original source. Okay? Yes, Sister Thelma.
I have with the very first paper you had us write, I had a secondary source, So before you taught us this, I used a two author, but it's another the primary person that wrote this. So instead of citing those individuals, I would cite that primary person that wrote it and take it from there and put their information in my reference instead of the secondary source.
If
When
you,
go ahead.
if you went back and read the original source, then yes.
Okay.
That is, if you went back and read the original source and did your own interpretation.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. Anybody else have a question about that? Sometimes secondary sources can be a little confusing. I want to make sure you all understand.
Because they just added a little more to his research. They use that primary source instead. If I do read it, it's better to use the primary instead of the secondary.
If you're basing your analysis on what on the primary source, it's always good to get that primary source. Now, if you want to read and have input on someone else's assessment of the primary source, you just need to make that clear. So there's nothing wrong with using a secondary source. But if you're using that secondary source as the sole interpretation of that primary source, you should go back and read the primary source. So if say you're reading a paper, well, so I think we gave an example last week about COVID, right? So you're reading someone else's interpretation of precautions you need to take. Say you're I don't know, your place of employment, your employer gives interpretations of how you should protect yourself from COVID. And they might have a list of, I don't know, 3 things you should do. Wash your hands often, don't touch doorknobs, and wear a mask. Well, so those are 3 things you can do, but and they're referencing a list from the CDC. Okay. So you're looking at your employer's website that's giving you guidance, and they're referencing a master list on the CDC's website. It would probably behoove you to, okay, take into consideration what your employer has said. You want to adhere to their rules because you don't want to get fired. But wouldn't it be better to go to the CDC's list and see the entire inclusive list of all the precautions you should take? And then you can do your own analysis that maybe I shouldn't just wear a mask, or I shouldn't just wash my hands thoroughly. Maybe it's I should wash my hands for a minute and a half as opposed to 30 seconds. Or maybe it's not sufficient to only not touch doorknobs. I shouldn't touch anything that someone else has touched, or maybe I should wear gloves. Or, you know, I'm using this as an example, but if you're looking at if you want to get to the source of things, of precautions you should take, it's probably better to go to the source for that material. Now, if you're just looking for guidelines from your employer because you're using that to tell another coworker, then maybe that secondary source is sufficient. But if you're looking for whatever the original source material is and looking for an understanding, it's probably better to go to that primary source. Have I confused anybody with that example? I was trying to do something very simple that could relay the primary secondary source. But if I've confused you, please raise your hand, let me know, or come off mute and say something. Okay, I'm not hearing anything. Thank you. I explained it good then. Okay, again, there's a complete list in your text. If you don't find what you want in your text, I am sure there is a website somewhere or a YouTube video that will help you with your in-text citations. Whatever you want to find, and if there's something you want to cite, I'm sure you can find it. If you can't find it, reach out to me and I'll help you find it. All right, so this week was just reiterating, and you all will have a light week, and I'm going to give you some time back because I want you to prepare for next week. Okay, so let me tell you about your assignment for this week. This week, you have a very simple assignment. I want you to read chapter 2 in your Wallace and Ray book. This is very important. I added a funny little bullet here because I want you to notice this chapter is going to help you with your week 5 assignment. Okay, if you want to go to your syllabus and look at your week 5 assignment, it is a very good assignment to teach you all how to do your research and how to prepare and how to analyze what you read and how to select what you read. This is all about selecting material you should read. Read this chapter. It will help you, okay? Your homework this week is very light. This is the one time that you all will write in first person, okay? So this week's assignment, 250 words. I want your midpoint reflection. So what is a midpoint reflection? I want you to tell me what you've learned in this class thus far. I've given you guys a lot of material this first 3 weeks, but I want to know from your own personal opinion, what have you learned in this class? Now, you do not have to give any references, but if you do, if you have a reference somewhere that you want to throw in about what you've learned, make sure that you also give me a reference page, that you cite it properly. I'm still looking for it. I want this should be well written, but this is something I want to know your personal thoughts. So whenever someone asks for your thoughts and what you think, you absolutely can write in first person. Okay, so I want your thoughts, 250 words. What have you learned thus far in this class? Now, you could also expand that if you want. And if you want to tell me what you expect to get, if you have some sort of expectations of more that you want out of this class. But this is your time to really give me your thoughts, okay? This should be a very easy assignment. Yes, go ahead.
Are we still going to set it up like we do in the rest of our paper with different subsection on it when we give it to you in the conclusion? No? Okay.
No, you don't need, okay, good question. Thank you for asking that. Still do a cover page, but you do not need your subject headings, have your section headings, but I do expect to not see 2 sentences or 1 sentence as a paragraph. So still have your sentence structure accurate, still have your paragraphs accurate, but I really want your thoughts. You are not required to have any references. You're not required to have an introduction statement or a conclusion, but I really want your feedback. I want to know what you've learned, and this is your time to give me your thoughts. If you add any citations in your text of what you've learned, then I do expect to have a reference page. And that should be pretty simple to do. Okay. Cover page, and then give me your thoughts. This should be easy assignment. Due Tuesday at midnight. This assignment is only worth 50 points. This should be easy for you all to knock out. But what I really want you to do is make sure you read chapter 2. I'm giving you time back tonight. You have an easy assignment this week. I really want you to read that chapter because it's going to prepare you for your week 5 assignment. Go look at the syllabus. You'll see what your week 5 assignment is. I want you all to do well with that assignment. We're winding down. We're at our midpoint. You guys have learned a lot thus far. I can tell in your writing, you all are all getting better. Just a few common mistakes you're still making, but you'll get through that. And you will see that in your midpoint. Yes.
I don't know if it's anybody else's experience, but I keep getting knocked out and coming back in. I don't know if you
get
noticed
knocked out of the class?
If anybody else. Yeah, it go off, then it brings me back on.
I've done it twice now. Yeah, it happened to me too.
Oh my. I don't know. It hasn't kicked me off yet. I'm so sorry about that.
Talking is just that it throws us out and have to go back to the screen 1.
Oh my goodness. I'm so sorry about that. I'll make sure that everyone gets this video. As soon as Dr. Short sends me the recording, I send it out to you all.
Oh God.
So as soon as he sends it to me, I'll send it to you all. I'm so sorry about that. It hasn't kicked me out thus far. So hopefully the recording will be fine.
It did it again, but I do have a question for you.
Go ahead.
It's out again. Doctor, you send us your slides. We don't get your slides. Sometimes I get you and your sister mixed up, but we don't get your slide. We just have to watch the recording, correct?
That's correct. I think with
Okay.
her class, they weren't sending out the video. That's why she was sending out the slides. But what I do is if whenever I have links in these slides, I send that in the email with the recording. So anytime there are any hyperlinks in my videos, I make sure that I give those to you all so that you'll have them, because you won't be able to click on them from the video.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, my next slide, this is the last slide. Again, I show this every week, but this is your reference material. This is important for you all to have. This just shows your books, the formatting and style guides. I highly, highly, highly recommend you guys take a look at this material. I can tell by reading your papers who's using the reference material and who's not. Please take advantage of this. I took a lot of time putting these links together, your YouTube videos that I've sent out before. Really, really, really take time to look at this material. It will help you. Any questions? I'm going to go back to your homework page. Any questions about the assignment? Okay. Any questions in general for tonight? Okay. I don't hear anything. I'm giving you guys back about 28 minutes. Please take advantage. Do your midpoint reflection. I will get your papers back to you. If I don't get it back to you tonight, I'll get it back to you tomorrow for your week 3 paper that you all just submitted, okay? I haven't got a chance to read them all yet. I started one of them earlier and I haven't got through it. So I will get the papers back to you so you'll have your week 3 grades. Again, if you have any questions, reach out, send me an email, send me a text. I most likely will not see it during the day, but in the evening, I'll get back to you. Any questions?
Do we have to have a title for our paper? Or did I miss that?
The title is just going to be midpoint reflection.
Okay.
We're keeping it simple this week. Your title is your midpoint reflection. You're just going to talk about what you've learned thus far. And if you want to elaborate and tell me what you expect to get out the class, you can do that as well. But this is for your individual thoughts. I really want to hear what you all have to say. This should be an easy assignment. 50 points. All right, nothing else heard. I'm going to give you back some time. As always, reach out to me if you have any questions, if you have any concerns, don't understand the assignment. As soon as I have the video, I will send it out to you all, and you'll have it available for you all. All right, give me your time back. Everyone have a good weekend.
You too, and thank you.
You're welcome.
There's Paulette.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone.